Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever looked at a historical event and thought, wow, that is a perfect blueprint for something huge happening centuries later? Well, that's exactly what we're tackling today with Isaiah chapter 32. We're going to map out the first restoration of the Jewish people under King Hezekiah and stretch that all the way forward to the latter days. It's a fascinating dual fulfillment prophecy, so let's get right into it. Right, so here is our roadmap. We've got 6 sections today. We'll start with A Righteous King Reigns, look at warnings to careless daughters, and trace the evolution of Judea. Then we'll cover the desolation of the land, see the Spirit poured out, and wrap it all up with 2 views of prophecy. To really grasp this, we need to anchor ourselves. We are looking at a sweeping 2,500-year scope. Keep this timeline in your head. We start way back in 715 BC with King Hezekiah. We move through the absolutely devastating falls of Jerusalem to Babylon and Rome, witness a massive spiritual shift around 34 AD, and finally, look ahead to the latter days. It's a huge span of history. Okay, Section 1, A Righteous King Reigns. Isaiah opens chapter 32 with this incredibly powerful image. He says, "Behold, a king shall reign in righteousness, and a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind." Now, put yourself in the shoes of an ancient Jew in 740 BC. Who are you looking for when you hear that? Historically, this points directly to King Hezekiah, because during a time of just immense terror from the Assyrian Empire, Hezekiah literally stood in the gap. He trusted God and made Jerusalem a safe hiding place, a true refuge from the tempest of war. But what's so fascinating here is the contrast between immediate history and an ultimate spiritual reality. You see, scholars call Hezekiah a type. He provided temporary physical refuge from Assyrian swords. But when we zoom out to the second restoration in the latter days, this king takes on a much, much grander identity. We're talking about Jesus Christ, the absolute ultimate hiding place, providing spiritual refuge and peace in Zion when modern storms hit. It's a total game changer. Moving on to Section 2, Warnings to Careless Daughters. After promising this righteous refuge, Isaiah sharply shifts his tone. He says, "Rise up, you women that are at ease. Hear my voice, ye careless daughters." Now, he isn't just giving ancient fashion advice here. This is a piercing warning to people who had gotten way too casual about keeping God's laws. They were, at ease in Zion, thinking, maybe I'll keep the commandments, maybe I won't. All is well. Isaiah is telling them to strip off that complacency and literally their fine silks and humble themselves, because if they don't repent, a storm of desolation is coming that will forcefully strip those comforts away. All right, Section 3, the evolution of Judea. To really understand the coming desolation that Isaiah is warning about, we have to take a quick historical detour to see how the geography and even the name of this region changed over time. The crucial thing to know is that Judea wasn't the original name of the expansive southern kingdom. Actually, it's a post-exile term. After the terrible Babylonian captivity, the returning captives, who were mostly from the tribe of Judah, were called Judeans. And their surviving homeland, which was much smaller now, became known as Judea, which simply means land of the Jews. You can really see it in this geopolitical progression. We start off with the massive kingdom of Judah. Then Babylon comes in and reduces it to just a tiny remnant around Jerusalem. Later, under the Persian Empire, it officially becomes the province of Judea. Fast forward again to the Roman Empire, and it's a territory ruled by appointed governors, or procurators, like Pontius Pilate. And it's in this vastly reduced, occupied Judea that Jesus would eventually be born, preach, and be crucified. Let's head into Section 4, Desolation of the Land. With that background in place, let's look at how tragically Isaiah's warnings came true. In verses 13 and 14, he paints an incredibly bleak picture. "Upon the land of my people shall come up thorns and briars, because the palaces shall be forsaken." Those people who were sitting back at ease, they would live to see their great city entirely emptied out. And this was fulfilled tragically not just once, but twice. First, with the massive Babylonian deportation in 587 BC, and then again centuries later, when Rome destroyed the city in 70 AD. The joyous city was just abandoned, left for wild animals to roam through empty palaces. Which brings us to Section 5, the Spirit poured out. But here is the good news. The desolation has a fixed limit. And this brings us to a profound spiritual turning point in Isaiah's vision. Verse 15 is the pivot. He says, "The desolation lasts until the Spirit be poured upon us from on high." And then he drops this powerful allegory. The wilderness be a fruitful field, and the fruitful field be counted for a forest. So what does that actually mean?
Well, in Isaiah's writings, a forest usually represents a barren wilderness, totally devoid of the Spirit.
And this is where it gets amazing, because it brilliantly illustrates a major spiritual flip in the 1st century AD. Historically, the Jews were the fruitful field, right? They were the covenant people. The Gentiles were the barren wilderness. But when the Messiah arrived, the Jews largely rejected him. So they lost the Spirit and became that barren forest. Meanwhile, the Gentiles, the wilderness, accepted the Christian gospel and suddenly blossomed into the fruitful field. It is like a perfect allegorical snapshot of the New Testament church. Following that outpouring of the Spirit, verse 17 tells us, "And the work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness quietness and assurance forever." Think about it. Why do we even try to live righteously? The answer is peace. It's that quiet assurance that God has our backs. That was the promise given to the converted Gentiles back then, and it's the exact same promise for the Jews upon their conversion in the latter days. Safe, happy protection under the Lord's care. But before we get to that final piece, there's judgment. Verses 19 and 20 talk about hail coming down on the forest and the city being laid low. That directly points to Rome totally leveling Jerusalem to the ground in 70 AD. But look closely at verse 20. "Blessed are ye that sow beside all waters, that send forth thither the feet of the ox and the ass." Now, who are these sowers? In the 1st century AD, we're talking about the 12 apostles. They were lowly in societal status, kind of viewed like the ox and the ass by the elites of their time, but they were the exact ones tasked with planting the seed of the gospel across the entire Gentile world. And finally, section 6, 2 views of prophecy. As we wrap this up, it's important to note there are basically 2 distinct lenses to view all of this through. On one hand, you have the linear, or Assyrian view. This sees the hail on the forest strictly as God's immediate judgment on those invading Assyrian armies. It's a localized, historical reading. But on the other hand, you have the millennial view. This sees the prophecy as a sweeping type for the latter days. Christ is the righteous king, the gospel is restored to the Gentiles, judgment falls on the wicked, and the end result is ultimate millennial peace. And, as is almost always the case with Isaiah, both lenses offer profound, overlapping truths. So to conclude this explainer, I want you to ask yourself a question based on everything we've looked at today. Where are you seeking refuge when the storms of life inevitably hit? Are you trusting in that casual, complacent ease that Isaiah warned the careless daughters about? Or are you building your foundation on the quietness and assurance provided by the righteous king? The storms are guaranteed, but as Isaiah so beautifully showed us, so is the hiding place.